Today is May 31st, 2024. We are interviewing Werner Rickheimer. My name is Esther Finder. Mr. Rickheimer is in Mequon, Wisconsin. I am in Henderson, Nevada, in the United States, and the language will be English. Thank you for speaking with us today. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling fine, thank you.
What is your name, sir, and can you please spell it?
My name is Werner Rickheimer. It's Werner, and then the last name is Richheim, as in mother, ER.
What was your name at birth?
My
Same name?
was Werner Rickheimer.
Where were you born?
I was born in Karlsruhe, Germany.
And when were you born?
I was born in October 8th, 1937.
Had your family lived there for many generations?
Not that I know of, but I was only 7 years old. 3 years old? What do you tell me? I'm not sure what you're asking. I was born.
If your family had lived in Germany for many generations?
Yes, as far as I know. Now it's possible that they go back further than I know, but.
Okay. How old are you today?
I am 60. I'm sorry. 86.
What was your father's name?
Siegfried was my father's first name. I don't know what his middle name was. Siegfried Rickheimer, but I don't know.
Do you know where he was born?
In Karlsruhe, Germany.
What do you know about his family?
Not very much, because we were only together 7 years, 8 years. Before.
Do you know what work he did for a living?
He was in the in the linen business, but I don't know exactly what he was doing. I was very young at the time.
What was your mother's name?
My mother's name was Eugenia.
Do you know where she was born?
Probably in Hamburg. I don't know. I honestly don't know.
How many brothers and sisters did you have?
Did my mother have?
No, did you have? How many brothers and sisters?
I had one sister, and that's all.
Was she older or younger?
She's older. She's deceased now.
And what was her name?
Laura. I don't remember her middle name. I don't know if she had a middle name. Laura.
That's okay.
Let me just give me a chance here. She's been deceased a number of years.
That's okay.
Or I
What? Hmm?
go no, go ahead.
What are some of your very earliest memories?
My earliest memories were in Germany, in Karlsruhe, being driven out of our home. My grandfather and grandmother lived in the same dwelling that we lived in. So we had to leave at the same time. The Germans came to us and told us we had 15 minutes to gather a couple things, and they were very limited as to what we could take along with us. And if we're taking any money, it had to be up to a certain amount. I don't know exactly the money. What else was there? Is that the only question?
Well, I was asking you about your earliest memories. What do you remember taking with you?
Blankets, mittens, hat, some kind of a bag that we carried things in with. That's about it, I think.
Do you have any childhood memories of family gatherings or holidays?
Not really, no. I was very young at the time. No.
You mentioned the Germans came and collected your family. They gave you a few minutes.
They gave us 10
And
minutes.
where did they send you?
They sent us to the street where we gathered everybody from other residents from other houses and businesses that were Jewish, and they were told to go to the end of the street where there were some cars that were there to take us to the train station.
When you got to the train station, where did they send you?
They kept us there. We got there like around noontime, and they kept us there until the train arrived that we were supposed to take. And that was around 7 o'clock at night. And it was a cattle train. It wasn't a passenger train. And they gave us a piece of dried bread as we boarded the train. And then they put 2 empty bottles or some kind of a thing for waste material if you had to go to the bathroom. That was kind of it. And there was no place to sit. Everybody stood or sat on the floor wherever there was more room. And we were on the train for about 8 hours.
Where did they send you?
Good question. I don't remember that. I was so young. Where was it?
Can we take a break for a minute, please? I'm having a little trouble hearing you, sir.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, we're back. I'm sorry, I was having some trouble hearing you before, but I think we've got that corrected. Um, you were telling me that you were put on a train and it was a cattle train and you were shipped away. Um,
We didn't know where we were going at that time. We were just pushed into a train and they started moving, but we had no clue as to where we were being taken.
do you know when that was or how old you were?
I think I was 8 years old.
And you don't know where you landed when you got off the train?
I remember, I mean, we went to a number of places. I don't know if this first one was, I don't know where it was. I really don't.
Were you sent to a camp or a ghetto?
We were sent to a camp. Gers was, I think, one that we went to. River Celsius, or is another one, and maybe Gers, River Celsius.
That's okay. We'll get to them one at a time. So the first one was first. Can you tell us what the living conditions were in this first camp?
The living conditions were very similar in the first 2, 3 camps, and they were horrible. We were sleeping on the floor on straw. We had no bed or anywhere to call home, and there were no bathroom facilities. They had buckets in sections of the room where you had to relieve yourself. And you were not allowed to leave. You were locked in, and you had to get permission from the guard. There was two guards in each of the rooms that we were in. These were large rooms, and the windows were up high, and they were broken in many places. So in the wintertime, you got wet if you had snowing or raining or something, and you were down below there. It was miserable. Well, like I said, you couldn't leave. You could leave with special permission from the guard at the door. You had to tell him where you were going, and sometimes they had to get permission to let you go. Like if you wanted to go see your father, for instance, who was in another part of the camp, once in a while, once in weeks apart, you could go visit your father. He can't come to visit you, but you can visit him and spend a couple hours with him, and then had to come back.
What about the food?
I'm sorry?
What about the food in the camp?
Well, the food was horrible and very inadequate. We had warm water for breakfast. We had like a dried bread that was miserable, and that was it. And that was your breakfast. Every once in a while, we would get a little milk, but that was very seldom. And we had another meal at lunchtime, which was about the same. Sometimes they had soup, if you want to call it soup. It was like hot water with something floating in it. And that was it. And then that was my supper. I mean, it comes then supper, and we had very similar as lunch. We had usually something warm that was with floating around something. I don't know what it was. It wasn't meat, but it was something else. And you had just one piece of that, and they had metal cups that you could use to drink. And that was it. Every once in a while, for a birthday or something, they would give you something sweet, which wasn't very often, but that was it.
Was there any medical care?
They only had emergency medical care, like somebody would take you to the infirmary, and there would be someone that would take a look at you and see if what. The problem was that we had doctors there, but they had nothing to work with. They had no medications. They had no instruments to work with. So it was really useless, and they admitted it, but they couldn't do anything about it.
You mentioned you were very young when you were in this first Camp Gores. What did you do during the day while you were there?
I spent it in the house. I had a couple friends that we played with outside, but it was very restricted, and my parents would never let me be out there for any length of time, or if they couldn't see me during that period. So you couldn't just walk to your neighbor where they couldn't see you anymore, and they said, no, you can't go there.
Who were some of the other people with you there?
My sister, who was 8 years older than I was, and my father, and my grandparents. My grandfather had the kosher meat market downstairs, and so he was there during the day when he was working, and my grandmother was upstairs. That's kind of it. We had services, Shabbat services, from what I can recall, and holiday services during the year. We went
in the camp.
In the camp. No, not. This was at home now. This is when I was in early childhood, and we always went to synagogue for on Shabbat. We observed Shabbat, and that was kind of it. And my grandmother cooked and my mother cooked during the week, so we could eat at Shabbat without turning on the flames or turning off the things. So.
During your time in the first camp in Gores,
Mm-hmm.
what was the state of everybody's health in your family?
It was not too bad, except my mother was a diabetic, and she was a diabetic for a long time, and because of that, she had to watch what she was eating, and I don't know if she was on diabetes or not. That I don't know. I was young at the time, but diabetes finally she was to succumb by diabetes. As a matter of fact, she died on the train going to the last camp that we were being sent to.
How long were you at Gores?
In
Approximately.
In Gurs?
Mm-hmm.
I would guess a year, but I'm not exactly sure. I was young at the time.
You mentioned the next camp you went to was Reef Salts. How did you get there?
By train. Everything's a train. They never took us by bus. It was always had to take a bus to the train, and then the train to the wherever we're going, and then they would pick us up on a bus. An old bus, but it was a bus.
Were the conditions at the second camp pretty much the same as the conditions in the first camp, or were they different?
I think well, we still had the same problem with the in the winter time, because there was so much glass missing above us. The windows were up high, so nobody could leave the thing at night or any time for that matter. From what I can recall, I was very young at the time. They were very much the same barracks.
How long were you with the second camp?
About a year. Maybe a little more than a year, maybe 12 months or something like that.
Was there anything that your parents could do to try and save you and your sister?
They tried. They tried many times. They talked to the supervisors or whatever you call them. They couldn't care less. I mean, what's one body or two bodies, more or less? The less would be happier. They'd be happier with less. They wouldn't have to feed us and take care of us. Not that they did a lot of taking care of, but at least they had to count head counts and so forth in the morning and at night to see if anybody walked out. But that's about it.
So now you're in the second camp. Where did you go next? What happened to you next?
We went to it wasn't Gurs. It was from what I can recall, all the camps were very similar in nature. The way they were laid out may have been a little different, but once we got towards the latter part of my stay, where I got into the third and fourth camp, the living conditions improved a little bit. In Gurs and River Saltus. They had the sleeping was better, and the outer limits were not as broken down as initially. What I said was in the cold weather, we could, or if it rained, we got wet. But that kind of rectified itself as we got into the older camps.
With during the war, or did you get separated?
I'm sorry, what?
Were you with your mother the whole time, or did you get separated?
No, we were not separated. We were together. Not that I know of, anyway. We didn't get separated until the last. I wish I had my list of camps here. I don't have them all.
That's okay.
The last one where my parents were able to go to a different camp, different type of camp. That we took buses there, I think. Part of it was on a bus, and the other part was on a train. And that was the last camp. That's when they gave my parents an option to let us release us from the system that we were on, and they were going to take the Quakers came to us and looked for pick up as many Jewish children as they would allow. And where we were, I think there were about 20 or 22 children that were allowed to leave. And I would imagine that the parents couldn't go with them, no. But they had orphanages close by that they took the children to and left them there. That's how we were released. My parents stayed where they were, but they put us on a bus and took us to an orphanage that was close by to where we were, actually. But we never had contact with my parents again, as far as vocal contact. And we had no telephones.
You remember?
We had no telephones. I mean, we couldn't talk to each other, and we didn't even know. I think they only were there another week or so, and then they went to the concentration camps. My father was put to. My father was killed about a week and a half or so after we left him, and I know that because much later than that, about maybe 30 years ago, I was contacted by somebody from Karlsruhe who was working with the government there, and they were contacting people that used to live there to see if there's anything that they can do for us, I guess. And we said, yes, there is one thing that you can do for us, and that is we want to know where my parents died, and we want to know when they died, because we wanted to put some yard site notices up in our synagogue in Milwaukee. And so he first, then he got back, and he gave me some information that I wasn't quite sure it was accurate or not. But then I had him go to Berlin, and I paid him, and I said, do whatever you have to do, but I want you to come back with some information that I can use that will tell me exactly when they died and how they died. And he did that. And then my kids they got older, and my kids wanted to go back to Germany. And I said, I can't go back to Germany. And I'm sorry.
We'll get to that.
Okay.
In a little while. I want to stay during the war years for a few more minutes.
Okay.
If
Sorry.
we could.
Sorry.
Before you and your sister went with the Quakers, do you remember saying goodbye to your mother, and if she gave you any advice or guidance?
No, but my sister didn't want to leave. She wanted to stay, and we were both crying and hollering and so forth. And then my parents said, you have to leave, and that it's the only way that you can stay alive, and it's not going to make any difference for us because we're going to the same place anyway. This way you can have a life, and we'll feel better about that. So I had family there, not in Karlsruhe, but in Switzerland and in France and in I think that's about it. And so we stayed in touch afterwards from Milwaukee with them.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Stay in the war for a little bit longer.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
We'll get there.
I'm getting off.
I promise you, we'll get there.
Okay.
Okay, we're back. And we had a lawnmower apparently come visit us. I wanted to ask you. You said goodbye to your mother. You just told us that you and your sister were crying, and it was hard to say goodbye. Where did the Quakers take you?
The Quakers took us to an orphanage that they worked with other children also from other places, and they lived on a farm. There was a farm that they had a barn and a house on. And then German the troops would come there during the day and take whatever they wanted to take along with them, food from the farm. And every once in a while they would be saying that so where are you hiding the Jews? And they said, of course we don't have hiding Jews. We're farmers. We worked the farm. She had a machine that does what do you call them? A sewing machine. She had a sewing machine in the living room, and she had. It was on a carpeting, and underneath that there was a trap door that led to the cellar, and that's where we spent all day long there, and they would bring food to us during the day, but at night they would let us come up because the Germans didn't do any what do you call them? They call them their whether you look for Jews or people.
The raids?
I'm sorry.
A raid looking for Jews? Is that what you're
Yeah,
trying to say?
yeah. But at night they don't. They want to. They don't want to work, so they never came out. They never came out to us during the night. But they were always suspicious that they were hiding us during the daytime, and every once in a while they would come in and say, "Where are they? You know, where's your trapdoor?" We don't have a trapdoor, so they look around, and of course they didn't know that there was anything underneath the sewing machine. So they never got to us. But those are the two people that took us eventually to the Swiss border. Hi. And, okay, I'm back.
You remember their names?
Oh, no.
That's okay. If you remember later, we'll add it.
Okay.
How long were you with these people?
Until arrangements were made with the Swiss guards and with my family in Lugano were very well to do, and they sent all the money out to the people that we were living with, so that they could sustain themselves. But and they sent money to the farmers also to take care of us, and for food and clothing. But when it was time to come to a conclusion as far as we wanted to bring them into Switzerland, not France. So they had two bicycles, and I rode on the back, or was hanging on to the back of the bike on a luggage carrier, and my sister was on with a wife, and it was about 9 miles from where their farm was to the border in Switzerland, and then my cousin was an attorney in Lugano, and his wife was this aunt and uncle in Lugano also, who owned all these stores and so forth. And so they gave them the money in envelopes to give to the guards, people that were transporting us across the border from Switzerland to France, or France to Switzerland, and then we got into Lugano, or no, Geneva. I'm sorry, it's Geneva, not Lugano. Lugano was where they lived, but Geneva is where the crossing is. There's a water thing. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm rambling off because that's what's coming back in my mind again. Okay.
You're doing fine. I do have a couple of questions. When you were in the camps that you mentioned, did you see any violence? Were there any beatings or shootings or hangings while you were there?
Yes. As a matter of fact, when we arrived by train from Germany to France, there was we got off the train. Oh yeah, we got off the trains like they told us to, and then they formed a line, and in front of the line there were tables set up, and there were people sitting there, and they took the information as far as who they were and their age and that sort of thing. All except the children. When my sister and I went through, they said just go in there and strip and take your clothes off and shower, and we'll give you clothes to wear, and that'll be it. Okay. Anyway, but when my part of my family was my grandfather and my father, and there was an uncle that also lived in Germany with us, and he was on the train also, and they took their information down, and we were, as we were coming out of that big building where we went for showers and picking up our clothes and so forth, we heard fireworks in the distance, and they had some they must have done this all the time, but these were they dug not graves, but just they dug something, holes that people would just fall into them, and then they would just cover them up with some dirt, and then next day they would do that with other people. So I lost my grandfather that night, and my uncle, and one other person. I didn't know it was them at that time, but I found out later that that's who it is. They were taken. They just didn't want to feed them. They just didn't want to put them up and take care of them, give them clothes to wear. Why should they? They were too old to work. They were of no use to them, so they just got rid of them. And that happened many times. All day long you could hear the fireworks going off.
At the time, did you know what this was, or you just heard the noise?
I heard the noise. Later on, when I was a little older, they told me what it was.
What did going to Switzerland mean to you and your sister? Did you know in advance that you were going to cross the border into Switzerland?
Yes.
What did that mean for you?
It meant freedom. We didn't want to leave my family, my parents, but they made us leave. I mean, they really made us leave. You're not staying here. You're not staying elsewhere. We'll see you. We'll come back and see you again.
When you left your parents and you went with the Quakers, how did you get out of the camp?
They took, the Quakers came with a truck, like a bus truck, and they took the seats out. They were in there, and they put straw down, and then they had extra straw, and they told us that we had to be kept under the straw and as deep as we could be, because the Germans will take a knife, or what do you call them these? Like
a bayonet.
Bayonet, yeah. They put them on their rifles. And are you taking anybody with you? No. We're just taking them. We're going out to do some work at somebody's place, and that was it. But they didn't get to us. They tried, but they didn't. They knew where we had to be in the car, so that they wouldn't get us there. In the bus, whatever. It was like a repair truck or something like that.
What was the state of your health, you and your sister, by the time you got to Switzerland?
Well, we couldn't eat. We couldn't get any food down. We got there, and oh my God, we're going to have some food. We hadn't eaten food for 3 years. And we couldn't keep it down. So they put us in the hospital for 6 weeks, and they put us on feeding tubes to build up our system again. And finally it started working, and we were able to swallow food and not have it come back up again. And then we stayed with my aunt and uncle. They had a beautiful home out on the Lake Como. They wanted us to stay, and at the same time, they know that they couldn't take care of us. And so they started looking, and then when we found something, we all went together, and they introduced us, and they stayed with us for a couple of days, so that we would be not so alone. And they had 3 children that were now they were a little older than we were, but nice kids. The father was a doctor, and that's one of the attractions that my aunt and uncle were looking for, because we needed a lot of medical care because we were so run down. I mean, this had been going on for about 3-4 years of not eating, and and they were happy because they were getting a lot of money to take care of us and take care of them. And we went to shul with them every day, every weekend, no matter how cold it was outside. We took that 6-7 mile walk each way to go to shul, and it was kind of neat. And it's a funny thing, I know it's not anything that you asked me, but when we were in Zurich, that's where our city was that we went to for our prayers and so forth and holidays. And they gave us a book, a prayer book. And I never looked at it. I didn't even know that Lori, my sister, had one also. And about 100 years later, it just happened. Somebody brought a prayer book to our synagogue because they were not Jewish, and they didn't know what to do with it. But they said they knew that there was a proper way of disposing of it, and the people that at the synagogue knew who we were, because we had been there for a good number of years. I went to school there and so forth. And they gave the book to us. They called us and they said, somebody dropped off the book, but we don't know who she was, because she's not a member of the temple, and we have no name. But I signed, it was my signature and my sister's signature inside the book. So I know it was mine. It wasn't something that they picked up and walked off with it. And I still have it, but of course I wouldn't get rid of it, never get rid of it. But it was such a I mean, this was maybe 45 years later. I don't know where that book went in the meantime. But thank you for her that she did the right thing. And luckily she went to a synagogue that knew us. I mean, because we lived in a Jewish area, and there were other synagogues that were close by. They would have never found out.
How old were you when you got to Switzerland?
When I got to Switzerland, I was I'm gonna say I was 9 years old when I came to Milwaukee. I think it was like 8 years old when I got to Geneva. And while we were living in this with the doctor and his family, we stayed with them because they wanted us to stay in Switzerland. They wanted to put us into my sister put her into the business. She was very good. She had a fantastic mind. But my aunt here wanted us to come to Milwaukee, and thank goodness she did, because I would have been in the business, but I would have had money, but I wouldn't have had the knowledge that I had here. And I went to dental school, became a dentist. No, it took a long time. I worked hard for it because I worked at night. My aunt and uncle didn't have much money, so I had to take care of a lot of my expenses. Dental school was expensive. I just kept on going. I worked at night. I just did everything I had to do to make it work.
Do you remember the name of the doctor and his family?
Yeah. Rothschild. Rothschild. He came from Germany, but I don't know from where.
When you were in Switzerland, when you had first gotten there, did you have any idea what had happened to your parents?
No. I mean, we suspected what happened to them, but there was no guarantee or anything like that we knew by talking to somebody who knew something about it or was whatever. No, I didn't. We didn't.
You had mentioned a moment ago that you had family in Switzerland.
Mm-hmm.
How many family members, who in your family was in Switzerland?
I had uncles and aunts and cousins, but quite a few of them. Some were in Lucerne, Zurich, that's where the main business was. In Lugano, the Italian sector. I had a sister in Geneva. That was a cousin. No. She was the daughter of the father and brother and aunt that owned all this stuff. So she was living in Geneva.
Of all of these relatives that you had in Switzerland, how many of them had you met before?
Had I met before? No.
How many of them were familiar to you?
None of them. Well, I mean, my parents, my aunt and uncle, but those were German German, but not everyone else lived in Switzerland, and then I think I had some aunts and uncles in France also, but I don't think I ever met them at the time. And in Switzerland and Italy, I had some Italians, aunts and uncles. That's kind of it.
But where were you? Excuse me. Where were you when you learned that the war in Europe was over?
I was in Milwaukee. I came here in 1946, 47, 46, I think. When did we have the big snowstorm here? You know, were you here at the time? Okay.
We don't need to worry about that.
Okay. Okay. 1947, January. That's when we arrived here. And that was when they had their big snowstorm. The biggest one ever.
What efforts did your family, maybe not you and your sister, but what efforts did your family make to find out what happened to your parents? And when was the truth actually revealed to you?
My aunt and uncle in Geneva, they hired these people to find them and find out what happened to them. They were the instrumental ones. As a matter of fact, they contacted the Red Cross during the entire time in France, and they gave them a lot of money to find my parents and to find us. They didn't know where we were. They were looking for us, and they knew we were in a children's home, but they didn't know where. They had no clue. So they looked and looked and looked, and they gave the underground money so they could buy their instruments and for their uniforms and whatever else they needed. And so they were very instrumental in finding us and taking care of us. They didn't want us to come here.
When you were in Switzerland,
Mm-hmm.
did you experience any anti-Semitism?
Oh yeah. In Switzerland?
Yes.
No, I didn't. Don't forget, I was young at that time. I was 8 years old, 7 years old. I came here when I was 9.
Is there anything else about your time in Switzerland that you'd like to share before we move on to Milwaukee?
No. I mean, they had a number of close relatives there. They had 3 sons, and they had 2 daughters. And one daughter was married to the lawyer who filled out got all of our papers so we could get a visa and come over here. That was kind of it. They had a lot of relatives all over. I didn't know, so I was young at the time. I mean, I was...
Do you remember leaving Switzerland to come to the United States?
I do. Very much.
What did you bring with you?
My wife. No, I didn't bring her along. We didn't know each other. Give me the question again.
Sorry, we're back again. What did you bring with you from Switzerland to the United States?
What did I bring with me? Not very much. The clothes I was wearing. I came across with my sister, who's been my mother for ever since we left my parents, until she passed away from ovarian cancer at age 46, very young. After going through all of that, what she went through and taking care of me and all of that, it was very hard.
I know you were young when you came here, but what were your expectations of the United States? What did you think you would find here?
You know, thing that kept me going was my sister. She was my mother at that time already. And a few years later, she was still finishing high school. She had to finish her senior year in high school at Riverside High School. I don't know if you know where that is. But anyway, and then she married a few years later, and we were still very close. And that's it.
Do you remember your first impressions of the United States?
Yes, I have a very good one. We stayed with I had an aunt and uncle and a cousin and then they took us in for about 4 or 5 weeks. We landed in Milwaukee. We came to Milwaukee first to meet my aunt and uncle, and then they wanted my cousin in New York wanted us to come to visit them. So we took a train and with my sister and I, and spent some time with them. Not very long. And when I came back this was in Staten Island. Not Staten Island, it was someplace else, but close by. Anyway, my cousin, who knew the English language very well, and we were just running around, just having a good time together. And this was about a block or 2 blocks away from a fire station. And in Switzerland, we had, it's a very mountainous area. It's beautiful. But they have these trains, these electric trains that take you up the mountain to wherever you're going. And I was used to riding those things with my sister or with my cousin and so forth. And they had when you had to put for your fare, you had to put something in, some money in, to get your ticket out. And when I got to New York, we were racing around, and there was a red box on the corner, and I thought it was one of these things that you put something in and you get something out. And I was faster than he was, so I got to this red box, and I put something in there, a coin or something. I can't remember what it was anymore. And he shouted at me. He says, come this way, they're going to catch you." And all of a sudden, the alarm, the fire station became active, and we were running for our lives. And we finally got to his apartment house and went inside, and they never got us. But I mean, they didn't know who did it, or it was a false alarm. But still, I'm sure they had a lot more than that one. But anyway, I was so scared. I couldn't believe I had done that, because I could barely. I didn't know the language even, and here I was. They're going to arrest me. Oh yeah. Anyway, so that's my story.
When you came to the United States, did you experience any anti-Semitism or any anti-foreign sentiments from the locals?
Are you talking about Jewish versus non-Jewish?
When you first came here,
Yeah.
how did people treat you? Did you experience any anti-foreign feeling? Or
No,
anti-Semitism?
not at all. Not at all. It's nothing like today. No, not at all. As a matter of fact, I had a Jewish Miss Bilty, She was a Jewish, who's in charge of a high school, it's a principal. She was the principal. And she took a liking to me. I was the only foreign student and Jewish student in the school. And she wanted me to learn English as quickly as I could, and she did everything she could. I spent all my hours in the library reading books, and I can't believe it. I won't tell you how many books I read or how I reread the books, because I ran out of books to read. And I get to be a very fast reader and fast learner, and I learned very quickly. And she would make lunch for me once in a while, and she'd say, "I'm going to bring lunch to you, so we can read in my office." So she took some time out of her work schedule to help me get going a little faster.
Did you ever serve in the American military?
And what?
In the military.
Yes.
Can you tell us about that?
Well, I started off in the National Guard in Wisconsin, not because I needed to be in the military, but because I wanted the money to go, because I was going to school and there was extra money. When I graduated dental school, I got a notice from the military. They'd like to see me. And so I went, and they signed me up, and I was in the Army, medical officer, and they asked, the first thing they do is, of course, they send you something to tell you where you're going to be stationed. And of all places, I was stationed in Germany. And I said to Carol, I can't go back to Germany. They may put me in jail, but I'm not going back to Germany. So I talked to a few people, and they understood, and they gave. Oh, and Carol was she was pregnant with her first child, and in the Army they won't send you overseas if you're beyond a certain period, because they don't want to bring you back right away. So they changed my orders, and I went to Colorado Springs, which was a great place to go and spend time. So that's where I spent 2 years, and then we went to Milwaukee and started a life.
You mentioned Carol. Who is Carol? Please tell the audience.
I'm sorry?
You mentioned Carol. Would you please tell the audience who Carol is?
Carol is my wife, my bride. But she doesn't know German, even all those years.
So you married and you have a family?
We had our first child while I was while I was in Colorado.
What have you told your wife and children about your childhood? About your wartime experiences?
What would I say? Or what was it?
What did you tell them?
Tell who? The military?
Your family. What did you tell your wife and children about your own childhood?
Oh, they know. I mean, I have pictures, and we have movies, old movies that they don't think they're working anymore. But we've gone on trips. I took them back to Germany eventually. And that was
what was that like?
Was very hard, but they wanted to go, and my granddaughter, my grandson, they all wanted to go. there were about 22 of us that went, and I hired the fellow that went back to Karlsruhe to get me my information that I asked for early on, and he took us. He rented a bus, and took us around, and we had a good time, even though I didn't want to be there. But my house was still there. The original house that my parents lived in, my grandparents lived in. The food market was not there anymore. Now there was another business there, I don't know. Don't I have the pictures here of...
We'll do the pictures at the end of the narrative.
Okay.
I have just a few more questions, sir.
Sure.
How do you think your wartime experiences impacted your life?
I think it was a good, well, it wasn't good, but it was something that I thought about often when I was younger and going to school and becoming a professional. It made me realize how important it was for me to do this, to become someone successful, so you could take your children and send them to school and that kind of thing. That was it, kind of it. I don't know what you're getting at, but I'm trying to answer what's in my mind and why I did what I did. Because I was going to become a doctor. That's what I wanted to go into medicine. And I had a very close friend who was going to dental school, and he said, well, what are you going to do? Are you going to go to medical school or dental school? And I said, well, I'm leaning towards, what is that? Something's going on. Uh-oh.
Okay, we're back after that brief interruption. You were saying that you had a friend who was in dental school, and you were talking about whether to go to medical school.
He was trying to talk me into going into dental school, and I was trying to talk him into medicine. And then we both finally he gave in. He became a dentist, and I became a dentist, and we were still good friends. We were out for dinner last night together with our wives, but anyway. I think that answers it.
Can you? Yeah, that's fine. Can you share with us your thoughts about what's happening now with Israel since October 7th?
Well, I have close relatives over there, lots of them. I have my as a matter of fact, my niece, my daughter, okay. No, forget that altogether. It's horrible. I mean, we talk to each other almost every week. He calls me. He's a doctor also. And he has, they had 5 or 6 children, I'm not sure. Some of them are in the army right now, over there. But he's been wonderful. I mean, they travel back and forth. Even they're not afraid. They are afraid. It's in the back of their mind, but they don't want to see their kids on the battlefield over there. But we respect each other a great deal, and he is He's an allergist. You know what that is, don't you? Yeah, okay. Not everybody does. It's surprising. Anyway, and he's very well known, and he loves where he is. And they're just first of all, he won't leave because of his children and their grandchildren. They have a lot of grandchildren, and luckily, nothing has happened so far to any of his boys and girls that are there. But it's dangerous. It's scary.
Is there anything that you want to add that we have not yet spoken about?
No, you really covered everything.
Okay, then let me ask you my last question. What message do you have for future viewers of this interview?
What? Say that again, please.
What message do you have for people who will watch this interview in the future?
They'll find out it's hard. If they try to be as honest as I've been insofar as things that I've said to you that I never wanted to talk about or even think about again. But it's important, and if it helps other people, then it certainly is worthwhile. I had no idea what I was getting into when you called, but I figured, I think I can do this, and if I can help somebody, then it's worthwhile. And I think that's it.
I thank you very much for speaking with us today.
You're very welcome. Thank you for speaking with me. I had no idea what you were looking for as far as these questions, and
Who is in this picture?
it's my grandmother.
And her name?
Eugenia
Last name?
Rickheimer.
Do you know when it was taken or where?
No idea. I would not have been there anymore at all. We came here in 1947. No, this was probably taken sometime, maybe around that time, but I have no idea.
Was it taken in Germany or in Switzerland?
In Switzerland, probably. She was living in Germany in a like a retirement home over there, and it was my father's mother.
Thank you. And who are these people?
This is my sister and myself in Lugano, Switzerland.
And your names, please?
My name is Werner Rickheimer. My sister was Laurie Levy, although at that time it wasn't Levy yet. It was just Laurie Rickheimer.
And do you know what year that was taken?
I would guess, no, I don't, but I would guess somewhere around when I was 9 years old.
Okay.
And
thank you.
And I don't know about my sister, how old she was. Well, she was...
Can you tell us about this picture, please?
This was taken at our home in Karlsruhe, Germany. I would guess it's about I was probably 2 years old, and my father was, I don't know what my father would be. I don't know. But
The names, please.
I'm sorry?
The names of the people in the picture.
Oh. I'm trying to think of my father's first name. I can't remember that. I have it written down somewhere, but I don't know now. And I would be Werner.
And it was taken before the war?
It was, yes. It was just
in Germany?
In Germany. It was just before the war, or maybe a year. Oh, I don't know if the war was going on. I'm not sure. That I'm not sure.
Okay.
That may have been going on, but I was too young to understand that.
Okay, thank you.
And
can you tell us about this picture, please?
this picture was taken the same spot as my father's picture, and about the same time also. I would guess my mother's. Do you know my mother's? Eugenia? No? I don't remember. And
the baby?
The baby is my sister, Laurie.
Last name?
But she hasn't been here for.
Her last name, please.
Oh, Rickheimer. Well, this was my father and my mother, but I
That's
can't.
okay.
I can't come up with
Okay.
that.
Thank you. And this picture, can you tell us about this one?
The picture was given to us by my aunt, who's sister to my mother. It was.
Who are those people?
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to think. Trying to think of their first names. They're my parents.
And the family name is?
Rickheimer. With two.
Do you know when it was taken? Before the war? After the war? Not after. During the war?
Probably during the war, before they had to leave Germany. It was. This looks like a peaceful picture. But probably in a park somewhere, because there are no other buildings around. Siegfried was my father's name. My mother's name was Eugenia. I can't think of it. I can't. I don't know.
That's okay. Thank you.
Can.
What are we looking at now?
We are looking at a prayer book that my sister and I used in not Geneva, in Switzerland, but in we walked there every Shabbat.
It's from Switzerland.
Mm-hmm.
Did you use this during the war and immediately after the war?
It's signed by me. It's my signature on there. That was done.
Uh-huh.
Isn't that amazing? I mean, this is 70 years, 80 years. and it popped up out of
This
nowhere.
is the book that you told us about.
Yes.
This is a book that was randomly brought to you.
That's right. I wish
Pretty incredible.
it is. It really is. And we keep it in a plastic bag, so keep it as for our children and our children's children.
Thank you very, very much for speaking with us today, and this now concludes the interview.
It's my pleasure, but I hope I gave you some information that's correct.